Facebook a minute here. There we go. Shalom Facebook, Shalom YouTube. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to read Revelation chapter 7. It says, after this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the land or the sea or on any tree. Now that's figurative speech. It's not saying that the earth is a square or one-dimensional with 4 corners. It's speaking of 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. For those who might struggle with that, it's figurative language. I saw another angel coming up from the east with a seal from the living God. And he shouted to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. So they'd been given power to harm the land and the sea. They had to wait for the okay. You might have power to do certain things, but you shouldn't do them if God's not directing you to do those things. He shouted, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. Now, you've heard about the mark of the beast, most likely. Most people have. This is a different mark. God seals his servants on their forehead, or he does so through his malachim, through his angels. And the reason he does that is so that they will be protected. I heard how many were sealed. Verse 4. 144,000 from every tribe of the people of Israel. Okay, makes it very clear where these 144,000 people come from. The people of Israel who have not been replaced. You can see that in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 31, and in Hebrews 8, and in Ephesians 2, and many other places. From the tribe of Yehuda or Judah, 12,000 were sealed. And it's notable that Yehuda is placed first here among all the tribes, being the new leader. Reuven, from the tribe of Reuven, 12,000. So Reuven was the firstborn, but he lost his leadership role. And we read about that in the Torah, right? From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. That's the way you say that name in modern Hebrew anyway. In biblical Hebrew, Gad. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. Asher, which is happy. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Shimon, 12,000, which is interesting. Shimon kind of disappears, when we talk about the missing tribes from the north and everything, and there's only a couple left or whatever. No, Shimon was dispersed among Yehuda, so they were among the people of Judah in the southern kingdom. And here they're become prominent enough again to be mentioned as one of the tribes. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. This isn't talking about inheritance then. This is all of the literal descendants of Yaakov, of Jacob, because Levi didn't get an inheritance, but here they are being listed again. From the tribe of Yisachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zevulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Yosef, 12,000. And so it seems like this must be Ephraim, because Manasseh has already been listed, who is also, Ephraim and Manasseh were the 2 sons of Yosef, and we've already said Manasseh, so this seems to be the tribe of Ephraim. From the tribe of Binyamin, 12,000. And you'll notice then that with both tribes of Yosef mentioned, you still only have 12. And the reason for that is the tribe of Dan, or Dan, has disappeared here. And there are a lot of theories for that. Maybe I can talk about a few of them, and you can give me your ideas as well. Let's see. And again, the Peshat, the plain sense meaning says these are people from the tribes of Israel, that it's literally the Jewish people. That should make sense, I would hope, to everyone. Dan. Some say Dan was excluded because he sinned by worshiping idols. And, that's interesting, but it's not really something that's proven. As a matter of fact, if you look in Yechezkel or Ezekiel 48:32, you'll see that one of the gates will be attributed to Dan. So it doesn't seem likely that would be the reason. There are others who worshipped idols as well, and yet they're still listed. Maybe there's something more specific with idols. Some people suggest that's later on down the list here. Lichtenstein, one of the Messianic scholars of old, Yechiel Lichtenstein, said maybe it was a scribal error, okay, that instead of Menashe, we should be reading Dan, because Yosef was listed, and that would cover Menashe and Ephraim. So maybe maybe the scribe made the error, and Yochanan didn't catch it when he proofread it afterwards. If he proofread it, we don't know. That's Lichtenstein's theory. And but we do see other places like Shimon is listed from Moses' blessing of the tribes in Devarim 33. So that's another mystery. It's not like this is the first time a tribe has gone missing in a listing for one reason or another, that we need to try to discern what's the purpose of that. Well, we don't need to, right? But it's one of those things we love to dig into. Some suggest that Dan is absent from the present list, because the anti-Messiah comes from this tribe. Well, that was a theory of Irenaeus, one of the church fathers in the 2nd century, but there's no biblical proof for that. He got it, though, from a Jewish pseudepigraphical book, which means it's a book that claims a particular author, but that's not really the author, or doesn't seem to really be the author, to the best that scholars can discern, which was Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, which sounds, like a very interesting book. But if these were Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, why was it written in like 100 BC instead of much, much earlier, right? Or seems to be, by all indications, written in only 100 BC. And in there, though, in that book, it says, there's a quote, "In the last days you will depart from the Lord." Dan is told this. "You will depart from the Lord in the last days. For I have read in the book of Enoch, the righteous, that your prince is Satan." And that is Testament of Dan, chapter 5, verses 4 through 7. Again, that's not a biblical book. So I don't know, it doesn't sound like solid evidence to me, but it's out there. Another reason for Dan's omission, I think this was David Stern's take, might be this tribe's poor reputation. There's a Midrash Rabbah that explains Numbers, or Bamidbar 2:25, saying the standard of the camp of Dan is to be on the north side. And from there, the sun is in the south, so it's farthest from the sun, the north, and the sun is in the darkness, and attributing that not just to a literal darkness, but to spiritual darkness. Dan darkened the world by idolatry would be the idea. I don't know. Again, others, had idolatry. So, and the tribe of Dan lines up with one of the gates in Ezekiel. So in the end, so doesn't really work for me. It's meant. So there are a number of theories out there for Dan. I'd like to see what you think about this mystery. if you put it in the comments, what you think best explains it. And if you have some, especially if you have some other theory that's not mentioned here. And some people, when, it says very literally that these 144,000, the Peshat meaning, the plain meaning of the text, that they're from the people of Israel. But some object to that saying, how can they know how many are from each tribe? I mean, nobody knows that, 10 lost tribes and all that, right? Well, the answer is God is the one who's doing the choosing here. Okay. And he knows. So that's a very simple answer. All right, moving on from this. Many of those notes, by the way, came from the David Stern's Jewish New Testament commentary. You'll find a lot of great ideas out there. And one of the things that he does that's very scholarly, that not many people dare to do, is present various options on how to understand different difficult passages. Normally you see someone so devoted to one particular tradition that that's all you'll see is that tradition's ideas projected, and that can be stifling to the process of learning and or spiritual growth sometimes. So it's good to be able to exercise the mind and look at different options for understanding a passage sometimes, right? Some things are very, very clear. The Peshat meaning, the plain text meaning, is what we want to go with usually. Anyway, back to the text. After listing these tribes, after this, Yochanan is writing, after this, I looked, and there before me was a huge crowd. It was huge, too large for anyone to count. That's really huge, right? From every nation, tribe, people, and language. From every language, not just every people group, every ethnic group, every tribe, every nation. All the Goyim are represented. They were standing in front of the throne and in front of the Lamb. Some people today, teach that if you are a Gentile, a Goy, then, there are different variations of this, of course, to different levels. But some say, hey, when you become a believer in Yeshua, then, and they may use different names too, when you become a believer in Yeshua, you become Jewish. Well, that's not what this text is saying. It's saying, you become part of the Commonwealth of Israel, the biblical text tells us, but your DNA doesn't change. There are still people from every nation, tribe, people, and language. And they're in front of the throne and in front of the Lamb. The throne and in front of the Lamb, dressed in white robes and holding palm branches in their hands. Interesting. This goes along with the Commonwealth of Israel concept, because the palm branch is the symbol of Israel. I don't know if you knew that. So when, for instance, Yeshua was riding on his donkey into Jerusalem in his last week on this planet in physical form, and all the people were waving palm branches, they were acknowledging him as the King of Israel. They were waving, it's like they're waving flags, Israeli flags, all around and welcoming their king. Of course, the problem was the leaders weren't out there. They didn't accept him as the king. They rebuked him because they saw this as openly in the face of the Romans, this waving the palm branches, and they're saying, "Save us now, Hoshea-na, save us, please, now." Anyway, back to this text, though, right? I can tend to go off track. And they shouted, these people from every nation, tribe, people and language, in front of the throne, waving their palm branches like Israeli flags. They're shouting. They shouted victory. He writes it in past tense. He's in a vision. He's telling you what he saw, past tense, but it's something that has not come to pass yet. And he writes that they shouted victory to our God. who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And this is very important because we know from the Tanakh, God does not share his glory, but here he is sharing, the Lamb is getting glory, God's getting glory, and God is not upset. God is not upset here about this. Maybe it's because this uniplurality idea of a God, which people in Kabbalah recognize, and they're clearly, plainly Jewish, and the grammar and the Hebrew language itself brings out a uniplurality of the words Elohim, the word Adonai, for example. Great mystery for some people, right? Anyway, so to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb, all the angels stood around the throne. All the malachim stood around the throne, the elders and the four living beings, 12 elders, and the four living beings, they fell face down before the throne and worshiped God, saying, Amen. They are agreeing with what all the huge crowd of goyim from every language and ethnic group from all around the world were shouting there. That victory to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. They are agreeing with this. Amen. Praise, and add to it, praise and glory, wisdom and thanks, honor and power and strength belong to our God forever and ever. Amen. And I'll say amen to that as well. One of the elders asked me, this is Yochanan writing again in his vision, one of the elders asked me, these people dressed in white robes, who are they? And where are they from? I don't know, I'm the one having the vision. Why don't you tell me, right? I'm paraphrasing. He says, sir, I answered, you know. So he told me, these are the people who have come out of the great persecution. That's interesting. This crowd that's before the throne, clearly they're in front of the throne of God here. They've made it into the kingdom, and they've come out of the great persecution. That's interesting to think about, right? And they're from every ethnic group. It's a huge crowd, that so huge it can't even be numbered. There's a great, in the end, there's going to be a great division. There's going to be a great falling away, or there's going to be another group that's also going to be huge, right? There's going to be striving to, in zealousness, to follow God the best they possibly can. There's going to be very little lukewarmness in the end. When the persecution begins, you've got a choice to make. And I hope if it happens in our lifetime, and there is persecution that does happen already in our lifetime, it's already happened in the Middle East, in Egypt, and with ISIL and ISIS. I don't think they ever actually became ISIL, though some people called them that. They never took over Lebanon or Israel, right? The Levant, ISIS. Right, a lot of persecution has taken place. There was persecution in Palestinian areas in particular against people who believe in Yeshua and anyone who is pro-Israel especially. Anyway, these people dressed in white robes have come out of the great persecution. They have washed their robes. Notice who's doing the action there. They have washed their robes. This sounds like the bride who has made herself ready. Okay. What they have washed their robes and made them white with the blood of the Lamb. This is figurative language. Talking about their faithfulness going through that persecution. How does Stern say this? A metaphor. Excuse me. These are those who did not capitulate under persecution. They're regarded by God as sinless, compared to Isaiah 1:18, because, okay, very important, because they have remained faithful to Yeshua, who shed his blood for them, even through the persecution. Will you remain faithful if you're faced with persecution? And oftentimes now we're faced with persecution at a much lower level than what we usually think of when we're talking about persecution. But it does happen here in America as well as around the world. And much worse, of course, in places like Iran or China. And if you have notes about that or thoughts about that, please be sure and feel free to add them down below as well. They have washed the roads and made them white, making them pure with the blood of Yeshua, the blood of the Lamb. That is, they're relying and trusting and maintaining their faith in Yeshua. And it's showing by their lives, by the fruit of their lives. That is why they are before God's throne. Verse 15. Day and night they serve him in his temple. Wow, to be in the heavenly temple is just an incredible thought, a very motivating and stirring thought for me. But to be able to serve him in the temple, like, even one day in your courts, wow, it's better than 1,000 years even here on this earth. Anyway, day and night serve him in his temple, and the one who sits on the throne will put his Shekhinah upon them. His Shekhinah. What is this term, right? It's the manifest presence of God, his dwelling, the presence of God dwelling among men. It's the same root, I believe, as Mishkan, which is tent or tabernacle, Shekhinah, dwelling, used in rabbinic Judaism to mean God's manifest glory dwelling with mankind. This term is used in Hebrews to describe Yeshua when he lived on the earth with us. And in Yechezkel 37:27, it's used when it's talking about the belly of the dry bones, and God says, and my tent, my Shekhinah, will be upon them, his manifest presence. And there's an image that comes to mind speaking about that with the Talit, the prayer shawl. When you get married, there's a larger version of the prayer shawl called a chuppah, which is put over the man and the wife, and the rabbi in there with them for, to do the service. But it represents the tent, the dwelling place of the groom, of the man, that the wife is coming to live in his tent, into his dwelling place, to stay with him. And God is described in places as having, in rabbinic writings, as having a talis, because it's this figurative language. Some people think of it like God's a big bird or something. We come to dwell under the shadow of his wings. Wing is, kanaf in Hebrew, talking about the corner or the wing. And of course, as if the corners of his talis is what we're talking about, from which I should probably do a teaching just on the talis again. It's been a long time. The name of God is encoded into the windings on each corner of those wings, on each kanaf. Anyway, that's why they're before God's throne. They're serving him. He puts his Shekhinah upon them. Now, sometimes when you're getting the blessing, the Aaronic benediction, the Aaronic blessing in a Messianic congregation, husbands will spread out their talis and they'll cover their wife with it along with themselves, and maybe even the kids if they're around, right? As if to show this is my tent. All my house is accepting this blessing from God through the one giving the blessing. And this is like God spreading his tent over his family in the same way. Does that make sense to you? Let me know. They will never again be hungry. You think about these people coming out of great persecution. They will never again be hungry. Imagine that all the people who have been martyred and starved. They will never again be thirsty. Imagine being persecuted in a cell and you don't get enough water. The sun will not beat down on them. People we've seen persecution in our day, kept out and bound in the sun in the heat of the day as torture. The sun will not beat down on them, nor will any burning heat. They stayed faithful and they won the victory. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will shepherd them, will lead them to springs of living water. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Won't that be a glorious day? Well, that reading of Revelation 7, obviously there are a lot more notes and things we could have talked about, but it's not Shabbat. I don't want to make the video too long for you. I see it's 26 minutes already. So I hope you enjoyed it. And please give us some comments. Give us some likes if you like the video. That's how other people get to see the video, from what I understand, on Facebook. And the more comments, the more likes, the more people they allow to see the video. So there you go. Have a great day. It's Shabbat's closing fast. I won't say Shabbat Shalom yet, but Shalom Shalom, and we hope to see you again.